when I joined WWE, I gave the Undertaker a VHS cassette of some of the things I'd been doing in Japan, and he was like, "That's admirable, but we're not going to be doing some of that stuff," never knowing that we'd end up topping everything that was on that tape. I mean, I was just thinking with the past couple of days, I remember having an intense conversation with Paul Heyman about trying to do an angle with Public Enemy, where I was like, if they could give me one good shot with that baseball bat and do as much damage to my eyes. That seemed like a perfectly reasonable thing to do, to draw a crowd of 750 people in a bingo hall. So some of the things that got ixnayed were in front of the smallest crowds imaginable. But over the years, there was several. I wanted to drop an elbow off the balcony, like in Korakuen Hall. And I remember being there, like in the risers, being like this. So it'd come down about, say, 25 feet. And I'd be like, could I go through this? Could I go through this thing? And I thought I could. I did not believe in my own mortality. One of the most painful injuries I ever had was on the set of a show called Warren the Ape. If anybody has not seen my performance, and it's remarkable. I only got it because Chris Jericho turned the gig down, and I end up bonding with Warren the Ape, who's a precursor of Ted, because he's an alcoholic, drug-addicted, sexaholic ape puppet. And we go out, we bond because we're on a golfing range. He sees that we both have this problem with temper, and they've got this huge chipmunk, it's about 8 feet fiberglass. And I putt, and the thing goes in the back end of the chipmunk, and it doesn't come out the front end. I start getting hot about it, to the point where I've actually got the golf club. I'm going, clearly, it clearly looks terrible. I'm going up the back end of this thing. And they were like, can you do something to that chipmunk? And they were telling me, don't touch it, it's fiberglass, it might fall apart. I was like, well, if this thing's as fragile as you say, I get a 3-step windup, I'll drop an elbow right through that thing. I was so convinced, 3-step, that's all you need, a 3-step approach. Now I'm over it. When I started doing these shows, I would come out every night, and if this was this is a really good place to drop an elbow off of. And in my prime, you give me 3 steps, even without my athletic, ability, I'd be like 8th row. I'd be all over the lap of that guy, And this time, I got the 3-step approach, and I dropped the best elbow I possibly can, and my body just ricochets and contorts off this thing, and it twists me in half, and I'm laying in the ground. I'm going, oh my God! I'm using all these terrible words I don't usually use in real life, and they go, "Don't worry, no one will ever see this." And I literally go, "I'm a wrestler. Shoot it all." This is what we do. When we mess up, we make sure it's on video. And my career is based on things that went terribly wrong. But those are a couple ideas of things that I wanted to do and got the ixnay on, and an idea of one thing that I thought I could do that it turns out I couldn't. We didn't even talk about Buried Alive tonight, right? Buried Alive, where the goal literally was to bury your opponent in a grave, right? And this is going back, I did 2 Buried Alive matches. One with The Undertaker, the first ever Buried Alive. The second one was a tag team Buried Alive match. And I talked about, the way I avoided that cell match for the longest time, to the point where Barry Blaustein, the guy who directed Beyond the Mat, he asked me, can you do me a favor? I know it's a hassle, but a guy I'm working for, his kids are big fans, and they want to meet you. His name's Brian Grazer. And I went, what is Brian Grazer? Like the top producer in all of Hollywood? His kids want to meet me? Do you mind? So yeah, there are a lot of things I have not enjoyed doing. Going to the top floor of Imagine Entertainment overlooking Hollywood, one of the most important people of Hollywood, was not one of them. They're like, oh yeah, Mr. Grazer's expecting you. And I was like, hey kids, any questions? The first guy goes, yeah. About 8 years old, he goes, did it hurt when? I go, oh God, oh here it comes. Like, when the Big Show threw you off the stage and into the grave in the Buried Alive match. And it was such a relief. Does anyone even remember this? And it was like, if you go back, watch it, there's no conceivable way I should be able to make that whole, except when you realize that, long jumpers do 26, 27 feet, so 18 feet off a stage is not inconceivable. So when I was walking Big Show around, I said, do you think you could throw me off this stage into that grave? And he said, absolutely. And when you don't practice this, you don't put crash mats, you just do it once and hope for the best. And so I told the kid, I said, boom, Undertaker threw me, and it was like you couldn't have done it any better. We had 100 tries. Boom, boom. I was in the hole on one short hop. And I was so happy that I was in there that I didn't even stop to think about the pain involved. I may have been sore the next day, and I came across this photo, and it's one of those things, just recently I tried to boost a post for something on Facebook, and they refused to do it because they said the ad was too sexual, the content. And what it was a picture of me giving the mandible claw to the Undertaker while Goldust licks what used to be my ear. And it's one of these things that doesn't make any sense, no matter how hard you try to explain that to a non-wrestling fan, but needs no explanation at all. To a wrestling fan, you're like, okay, so he got his fingers down the mouth of a dead man being licked by a guy dressed in gold. I'm good with that. And in the same way, it's like, do we need any explanation why a guy with a leather mask is coming out of a grave, putting a sock puppet into the mouth of a 7-foot giant in black underwear? Absolutely not. No explanation needed. It's professional wrestling. I'm good with that. But the story is, when I went to Mr. McMahon right before the Hall of Fame, it's like 2 weeks before, and I'd left 3 years earlier under less than ideal circumstances, So I come back, and I don't even have the same mojo I used to have, and I'm shy, and I feel like I was just like a shell of my former self. I was like a Great Dane that's been neutered or something. And Mr. McMahon, it's the first time I've had a meeting, he's looking at the ingredients of his protein bar, which is never a good sign. I read in Edge's book where he did the same thing. And when it's your concerns versus the ingredients of a protein bar, you're not going to win. And I just went, yeah, Mr. McMahon, I don't know if you know this, but Madison Square Garden's a big deal to me. He goes, it's where you saw Snooker dive off the cage. Now get to your point. I said, in all my career, I never had any type of exit or entrance, And he's, okay, what do you got in mind? I said, well, when I'm done with my Hall of Fame speech, I'd like to fly into the sky on a sleigh with Santa. He looked at me and goes, why the hell would I want to do that? And I felt so much like I had when I was on a field trip in 3rd grade and found out someone had stolen my Yoo-hoo. I was like, because I love Santa. And he goes, that's got to be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And I just felt like something coursing through my veins, like the blood of the 1995 Cactus Jack. And I said, Mr. McMahon, do you know what you told me when I joined this company? He goes, what's that, pal? I said, you told me you didn't give guarantees. All you gave were opportunities. And he goes, yeah, that's right. I said, well, maybe that was right when I signed on the dotted line for 5 years for nothing more than an opportunity. But 3 days after I signed for nothing, Mark Merrow signs the first guaranteed contract. And he gets more than a contract. He had a fireworks display so brilliant and vibrant, it cartwheeled and pinwheeled, did everything short of spelling out his name. But remember, Psycho Sid actually had pyro that did spell out his name. In case you're watching at home, and we're like, hey, Joey, who's this 6'9"? Oh, there it is, Sid. S-I-D. And I was like, you know what I got during the course of my career? You gave me nothing. No dry ice, no pyrotechnics. Even Gilbert got a sparkler. And then I said, Mr. McMahon, I was there. I was there in Indianapolis when after I'd finished burying my opponent, The Undertaker, alive, a bolt of lightning came down from the scoreboard at Market Square Arena and struck the earth not 3 feet from where I stood. I never asked how you did it. It wasn't my concern. I don't know how much it cost. It was none of my business. But I do know this. If if you had the capability and the technology to make a bolt of lightning come down from a scoreboard in Indianapolis in 1996, then you're going to find a way. You're going to find a way. In New York City, in the most important arena in this country in 2013, so help me, you're going to find a way for me to fly into the sky on a sleigh with Santa. And he was silent for like a minute. Then his big shoulders started shaking. He went, "You know, Mick, it's actually easier to change indoor weather patterns than to lift an ass your size." Into the air. Thanks a lot, Billy Kirkwood, you son of a bitch. You know, there was the darkness of that 96 Mankind character that lent itself so well to that cell and the things that I would have loved to have gone in as Cactus Jack. I didn't see the need for the tweaking. In retrospect, it was probably the best thing that could have happened to me because that character, I think, you know, in general, I had like a 6-month period of time because I did wild things and because, you know, because I had a certain look in my eyes that could allow people, not just allow, but convinced a lot of them that there was something not right. You know, people go like, "No, I know a lot of that wrestling stuff is," but that guy, like they really thought I was off. But people became aware, usually about a 6-month period of time. They became aware I was doing way more, going way above and beyond to deliver the best matches possible. And there was also like this almost universal recognition, and I talked about this in a special I did like 4 years ago. Be about 6 months, drop an elbow, look up at the camera, bang, bang. You could almost feel people going, "He's a nice guy." And that mask, as Mankind, allowed me a little bit more protection. But ironically, I think, you know, when I hit that table, even though I'd been Dude Love and I'd been Cactus Jack before and I was coming around back to being, now I was like kind of a corporate Dude Love and full-time Cactus Jack, I went back to being like slightly confused Mankind, and it was like the beginning of lightening that character up just a tiny bit. And in my mind, this was not intentional, but when I hit the table and it almost imploded upon impact, the moment that I took off that mask was the moment I thought I stopped being a character and became a human being in the minds of people, and they realized, like, that's a real person there, and he's suffering. And it was also a period of time when I went back, you know, I went home, my wife was really angry at me for the stuff I was doing. I mean, we went looking for smaller homes to live in, different school districts. We realized we had to stop a lot of things I was doing. And I realized I need to connect with audiences in a way that doesn't necessitate me doing the wild things quite so often. And within a 2-month period, you know, that character had lightened up so much, you know. So it was me and Kane against the New Age Outlaws at SummerSlam, and then began this beautiful story arc with Mr. McMahon that some learned wrestling scholars will tell you was like, actually, you know, not the attention-grabbing one that Steve and Mr. McMahon had, that feud that really, you know, helped propel the Attitude Era. But the Mankind-Mr. McMahon relationship was really cool. It was really cool because you had a guy who was using like an innocent soul to do his dirty work, and we had a great rapport, a great time. But if I had not been darker Mankind, there would have been no lighter-hearted Mankind. There would have been no rock and sock Mankind. So Cactus Jack could have done those things, but I don't think he could have done them as well, because 6 months into the run, he would have had more sympathy than needed to get the job done.